All right, good afternoon and welcome to the State Officer Candidate Information Session. Before we get started with introductions, I just wanted to make two really quick notes. First of all, please remain on mute unless you're asking a question so that there's no disturbances in the background. And secondly, please enter your name on screen if you've not done so already so that all of the other participants can see what your name is. So to start off with introductions, my name is Mok Shawa. I'm the California DECA State President and I'm a senior at Washington High School.
Hi everyone, I'm Lenexa Gonsalves and I'm a senior at American High School and I'm the Vice President of Communications.
Hi everyone, my name is Joel Beckwith and I'm a senior at Valencia High School and I'm your Vice President of Public Relations.
Hi everybody, I'm Christopher Carlson. I'm the Vice President of Southern California and I'm a junior at Valencia High School.
Okay, awesome. So today we're going to be covering information on the following positions: NorCal District Vice President, SoCal District Vice President, Vice President of Communications, Vice President of Public Relations, and State President. If you're interested in running for the Vice President of Silicon Valley position or a district action team, we encourage you to get in touch with your district chair or coordinator. We also encourage you to take notes during this call, but this call is actually being recorded right now and it will be posted on our YouTube page, and you'll be able to access it from there as well. One of the main inspirations for having this call this year is there have been so many changes from the last years for this year's process. So, kind of maybe some assumptions or things you may have heard about the state office candidate from past not actually apply this year. So we really want to use this as an opportunity to highlight some of the changes that have come about. And lastly, you can actually, all of the content we'll be going over today, you can actually access online on the California DECA website. So if you visit californiadeca.org and go to the candidate tab, once you do that over there, there's actually a candidate packet there. It's about a 40-page document that outlines every single step of the process for any position, regardless of what you choose to run for. So I definitely encourage you to take a look at that and follow along in that if you'd like. And now I'm going to hand it over to Yash to talk about why you should run for state office.
So hi guys, in case you didn't hear before, which evidently people didn't, my name is Yash Desai and I am the Vice President of Northern California and I'm a senior at American High School. So running for state office, I think that running for state office in the first place was one of the most valuable experiences in my entire DECA career. To me, it's more than just a position, it's an experience. And I think that the rewards are infinite when you actually take on the role. It builds on leadership to a different level. I used to, for those who don't know who I am, I used to actually teach marketing at my chapter last year. And it really helped me expand my love for working with people. And it really just overall takes the entire DECA experience to a much higher level. Now you're representing so many people and helping out members that you once were a regular member. My network has expanded almost exponentially. It's been great. I know so many new people, made so many new friends. And like I said earlier, it really, really helps you get more in touch with how the organization works. And you can end up helping members that, just like yourself. And I think that it's a highly rewarding place to be. And even running itself is a very fun experience. So I think those are some key reasons why running is a very good. So congratulations on making.
So now we'd like to transition to a part where we talk a little bit about some stories or some experiences we've had at state officers. And we think that rather than just listing out reasons for why you should run, we want to give some personal experiences we've had to give you guys an idea of, what the day-to-day life as a state officer looks like and why you should go for this your position. So to start off for myself, there's one aspect of state office that I completely love and a lot of people don't know about, and that's the advocacy part. So DECA actually runs on federal funding, which means that as a state officer, it's your responsibility to reach out to legislators and advocate for DECA with them. So for example, for myself, I reached out to the representative of my area, Representative Swalwell, and I actually met with him at Washington, D.C. at his office and advocated for DECA. And he's actually someone who supported DECA for a very long time. He's even spoken at the Northern California career development conference, and it was great to be able to chat with him. And this was something my parents had someone who my parents had voted for, and now I was getting to chat with that person and talk about what I love to do. And it was what the best part of the entire experience was that after having a nice 30-minute conversation with him, I asked him if he was interested in joining the DECA Congressional Advisory Board, which is a board of legislators who are publicly supporting DECA. And he actually signed on, which was a huge step forward for DECA. And it was really nice to see someone who I'd been so accustomed to, someone's name who I'd been so accustomed to hearing, finally actually join a board and support something that I was really, really interested in.
So for my thing, I kind of have an arbitrary thing that I pulled from state office, and it's something that I wish I had known when I was running. So around this time last year, when I was making the decision if I should run or not, one thing that I was really hesitant about was I've always been a very shy, reserved person, and I wasn't sure if I was to be a state officer. To myself, I don't have what it takes to lead an association of 1,000 people. I can't do that. But I made that decision to run for state office, and it is hands down one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. So if you're thinking to yourself that, oh, I'm not good enough to be a state officer, I'm not a good enough leader, throw that out the window and just go for it, because you don't have to think you're a good leader to start. You learn how to be a good leader. You get to go to a bunch of different conferences like ELS, WRLC, at ICDC, and you're attending workshops at this conference that make you a better leader. You get to work with Team Try, and their job is to kind of make sure that you're developing your leadership personality as best you can. And all the things that I've learned from being a state officer, it's things that I can take beyond my term. So even when I'm no longer a state officer, I know by being in this position, I've learned how to be a better leader, I've learned how to be a better communicator, and I've learned how to be a better presenter. And those are things that I think are invaluable. And I promise you, if you take anything from being a state officer, I guarantee you that you'll learn how to be a better leader.
So for those of you that don't actually know, I ran for state office twice. I ran one time in my sophomore year where I lost, and I ran one time in my junior year where I won. One of my biggest concerns coming into my second time running for office was, well, should I really run again, because there's a chance that I'll lose. There was a fear that I really would win. Why should I do this if I'm not going to get the office? That was when I realized, after I ran the second time, was how incredible the journey is in running for state office. Not only are you meeting all of these people, you're meeting all of these people state and from different, you're meeting all of these advisors and the people who you will impact in their lives. And running for state office really allowed me to see what this organization was on a much broader level, that it impacts so many more people than you actually realize. And I would highly encourage that if you're nervous about how you'll do, run for state office, because it is just an incredible journey that will really change your life.
So for me, my story was quite interesting. I started out, as I'd mentioned earlier, as the marketing instructor for my chapter. And I think that's the highest that I was going to go. I didn't really picture myself even being chapter president or any such thing. I thought that was just too far off. Like Len's story, I never really felt that I was state officer material. I revered them as people to a much higher level than I could possibly have reached. And I didn't really think that I would run in the first place. I was too nervous to. And initially, when the idea was pitched to me, I actually said no. And after talking it out and understanding exactly the aspects of the job and what I'd be doing, I really thought, hey, this is something that really does resonate with me. And, it's worth a shot. Better to actually run and lose than to not run at all and miss out on something so big. And so when I actually ran, I think that was one of the most valuable experiences that I've had in DECA, because when I ran, I learned so many new things in just the election process alone. and I actually managed to get a whole team of people helping me. I know Lenexa and I, when we were friends before this, so when we started working on this, we helped each other with our campaigns, and during the actual process, it was in speak, and when I gave my speech, the actual campaign speech, I think that's what really clicked. And then actually connecting with members directly. I'm a very people-oriented person, and I think that even running in the first place really helped me expand on that. And finally getting into office, it's been very surreal. I've been enjoying every moment of it because I've met so many interesting people. I've gone through so many workshops and learned so many new things. And I think that overall, nothing can get better than this. So if being a chapter officer is something you enjoy, then take that experience and multiply that infinitely, because being here is very special. And I think that every experience that led up to it, and even as we speak right now, I've had a blast doing. So again, I'm really glad that you guys decided to take the initiative to join this call and potentially run.
Okay, so now we're going to be talking about some of the responsibilities that you'll have as a state officer, and we've listed some of them. And of course, this isn't everything that you're going to have to do. There's definitely tons of more stuff. As president, you're in charge of leading the state officer team and making sure that all the projects you guys are doing are getting completed on time. You maintain communications with our executive officer team. You create a 10th of the month report for the board of directors, and you try and initiate a membership program to increase membership. Our district vice presidents, so NorCal and SoCal right now, you're essentially president of your district, and you're in charge of managing the president's council within there. And you're really, one of your biggest goals is to maintain and initiate contact with every chapter within your district. You should actively try and recruit new members and chapters. And appointed positions. Now these two there's a lot of overlap between them, so me and Joel do work really closely with each other. Vice President of Public Relations, you're in charge of creating press releases for California DECA, so you work a lot with the outside media. You try and distribute news about what California DECA is doing to the media. And then Vice President of Communications, you're in charge of the social media of California DECA, so the Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, you're the one who's posting on all that stuff. And then you also make sure you're creating promotional videos and flyers.
So to be eligible to run for a state office, one of the first things you need to know is that you have to be an active DECA member in your chapter. It is preferred that you do have some experience as a chapter officer, however, that is not required. You must have a minimum 2.5 unweighted GPA, and you have to be currently enrolled in or have completed a certified business CTE course. Additionally, you must submit all proper forms on time, and you may not be a senior. Only freshmen, sophomores, and juniors are eligible to run.
Okay, so this is the tedious part of running for state office. I know there's a lot of forms that you'll have to do, and there's a lot of steps that you have to complete. One thing that I really recommend is in the actual candidate packet, they have a timeline for all of the positions with every form that you guys need to turn in and what you need to turn in and when. So I would definitely what I did was I printed that out, and every time that I completed something, I just marked it off, and that I just made sure I was completing everything on time and turning all my forms in. So this is the general application process that all candidates will have to complete no matter which position you're running for. Now this is optional, but you can submit an intent to run form. This will be really good because it'll the state team know how many people are planning to run for office. Then you also have to submit all the candidate forms. Those are in the candidate guide packet. You have to complete a DECA knowledge exam by December 8th. This year it's a bit different. You don't take it at your CDC. You can take it online, and you can take it as many times as you want with your advisor present. You'll have to create a 30-second commercial video that talks about what you are, what you want for California DECA, and what your goals are. you have to attend an online candidate briefing meeting or at least watch a recording of it. It's going to be very similar to this meeting right here, and that will be just going over what you need to do in order to run. Even appointed positions will have to campaign, so you'll set up a booth at downtown DECA. Hopefully last year all of you saw some of our booths. So you'll have to campaign even if you do have an appointed position. There's a candidate interview that you're required to complete. For your district vice presidents, since this year you guys will be elected at your respective district CDCs, you just have one interview that you'll do at that district CDC. For your appointed positions in the state president position, you have to request a board screening interview. You'll do a board screening interview at your district CDC, and you'll also do another interview at your state CDC. And then it's required for appointed positions that you complete a portfolio, and it's also recommended that even elected positions complete a portfolio.
Okay, so for district VPs, all of your forms are due by the 8th of December, along with your commercial video. As mentioned earlier, it's a 30-second video about your candidacy. You should be attending the briefing meeting on the 20th of December with the state officer coaches. It's a video call. The portfolio is optional, and it's due at the start. Say it's optional, strongly recommended, because I mean you're offering up more information about yourself so that the voters know more about you. So I strongly recommend it. All of the campaigning that you saw myself and Chris do as just VPs at the state conference will be done at your district conference this year. So you'll have all of your speeches and stuff at the actual conference, and you'll have your single candidate interview during your district conference as well. So you'll have your briefing session as well at the district conference. And as I mentioned earlier, you'll have your 2-minute campaign speech. The interview, as mentioned earlier, will be there with one of the representatives. And as you've seen us do at the state conference last year, your informational booth will also be done at your district conference so that the voting delegates know who you are and know whether they want to vote or not. And your election result will be entirely based on majority votes. So the majority of the voting delegates, this time the interview does not play a factor. So the entire result is based on the majority vote from the delegates. So once you get elected at your district conference, you don't assume office or take on the role until the state conference. So you'll be labeled the district VP elect, and your term officially begins at the end of the state conference. So during that time, during the state conference, you're still required to participate in all the campaign and election activities. So you will need to have a booth at the state conference as well. And instead of calling it a campaign booth, it'll be more of an informational booth so that people know who you are and what your platform is, and just so that they get to know you in general.
Okay, and now I'm going to talk a little bit about the application process for state president. And the cool thing about this is it's very similar to the application process. The only difference is that because the state president encompasses all 3 districts, the election and the campaigning will be taking place at the state conference rather than at the district conference. So the first, I guess, date that really applies for the application process for state president is to email a board screening interview request by December 20th. So when you're emailing this request, you'll be emailing it to coach@californiadeca.org, and then you'll receive a time back for when your interview is scheduled during the district conference. And again, all the information and details on all of these different steps is available in the candidate packet at californiadeca.org/candidate. So there you can get a lot more information about which email to email, what process to go about, what forms are due. But we're trying to give you a high-level view of some of the dates that are coming up. And then your candidate forms and your 30-second commercial video will be due February 2nd. There'll be an online candidate briefing meeting on February 16th. And then the portfolio, if you choose to do it, will be submitted at the start of the state conference. And you'll be campaigning during the state conference, and you'll have a candidate interview during the state conference. And once you, so in terms of campaign and election procedures, there'll be a board screening interview at the district CDC. And after that, you'll have a candidate briefing session at the state conference. You'll be giving a campaign speech that will be up to 2 minutes at the state conference. And you'll also be having a candidate interview, and you're hosting your campaign booth at the state conference. And again, your election result is going to be based on a majority vote. And every chapter who's present at the state conference gets 2 delegates. So it's not based on the size of the chapter. Each chapter gets 2 delegates, and they'll have the opportunity to vote. And every single delegate present at the voting session will make a decision in terms of who they'd like to support for the position of state president. And the result is going to be based on a majority vote.
All right. So for the communications positions, there are basically the same. Other than various other things, the commercial video must be completed by February 2nd. Candidate forms also must be submitted by February 2nd. The only major difference is that the portfolio is actually required. It is part of the way that the decision will be made on your candidacy. That is required at the start of SCDC. Other than that, it is almost exactly the same process as running for president. For the campaign and election procedures, again, very similar to the way the president is. You'll be seeing a board screen interview at district and candidate briefing at the state conference. However, you will not be giving a campaign speech. You'll be doing a candidate interview at the state conference. That will determine 70% of how you will be judged. And you also have a campaign booth, even though you will not be getting elected by peers. You'll be getting elected by the candidate interview. Your result will be based 70% off of the interview and 30% of your portfolio.
Okay. So that's all we kind of had planned for. We just wanted to go over the process for you guys on a large scale. And now is the really important part. And I think this is the most important part for me that I saw as well the last 2 times I've run. Being able to ask us some questions and seeing, how we can help you out and make this process much easier for you guys. So if you have any questions, go ahead and let us know, and we'll do our best to answer them right now. Just make sure you unmute yourself while you're asking the question, and mute yourself after your question is done.
All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
So what if our chapter's not attending our district career development conference?
So in that case, what I would recommend is go ahead and shoot an email to coach@californiadeca.org and let them know that your situation, you're not ending the distance, and out something from you from there.
All right. How about for the vice president? The interview, election, and speech is all at the district conference, right?
Interview, election. Yes.
All right.
Any other questions? You guys can message through the chat as well if you want. If you have any other questions that you don't want to use your voice for.
Hi, I have a question. I'm Chris Kusamanagora, and for the state officer travel authorization, one of the forms that we have to complete, how are we supposed to complete that? Because it asks if you will be staying overnight at a location other than home. On your way to the event, please describe location, address, phone number, and name of chaperone.
So don't worry about that form. Actually, you could go ahead and fill it out to the parts that you can fill out. So for example, putting in the signatures, things like that. Don't worry about that part. You can just leave it blank. That's actually a form that if elected to state office, whenever you travel, you'll be filling out that form. So we just want to make sure you kind of understand how you go through that form, but don't worry about that specific part. Just make sure you have the necessary signatures.
Okay.
100% sure about.
Sorry. You can go.
Was someone else going to ask a question?
No, I was just asking if you're 100% sure about not filling the things out.
Yeah, you'll be fine. Don't worry.
Thank you.
All right. So I remember at the last state conference, Yash actually, I remember he had a campaign theme, Wolf Wall Street. So is that like a recommendation, or how does that work?
I'll let Yash answer that question.
Okay, so I didn't really make that my theme. I kind of threw that out as a reference because when I used to teach teach marketing at American, for our chapter. And during that time period, I used to actually throw out a lot of references from I guess you could say pop culture. And this used to actually be a sales training technique. What you heard in my speech that you're probably referring to right now, that was actually a sales training thing that I actually used on my students. And so I kind of threw that in there because I thought it would be a hook that everybody would get. You don't have to, but I think it'd be pretty cool if people are able to. I mean, right now, you still remember that I was able to use that hook, and this was so many months ago, right? So, I mean, if you can make yourself more memorable, then I definitely recommend that. But it's not a requirement. And, I mean, I wouldn't call it a theme, but if you do want to give yourself a theme, like for Moksh, his was Ignite. So just bringing that back. So if you want to, then definitely I'd recommend it. But basically just do something, make yourself memorable, and I think you'll go far.
All right, thank you.
All right. There's a list on the PDF file where it tells you all the events that the state officers will be required to attend.
Mhm.
For those, for the ones that are on weekdays, on our school days, do we get excused for those absences?
Yes, so you actually get excused for those absences. So that goes back to the travel authorization form we were talking about earlier. Once you fill out that authorization form, you get an administrator's signature from your school that officially will allow you to be excused from school and allowed to participate in the California DECA event. So yes, you'll be excused from school.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
For the campaign expenditure report form, how complete do we have to like fill that out?
Which form?
For the campaign expenditure report, like what if we don't know what we're, do we just like fill out as much as we know?
Well, so I'd recommend, before then having a good idea of planning on. I think it's a great thing that the form is due December 8th, so you kind of are forced to think about it a little bit earlier. So I'd say do it to the best of your abilities. And then at the conference itself, you'll be submitting an actual, final of what you ended up spending. So just do the best of your abilities in the expenditure form. And then, the actual amount of money you spend will be clear at the conference.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I just got a private message from Ashley, and she's asking, what do you look for in candidates? So that's a great question. And unfortunately, none of us state officers have any influence in deciding who the next state officers are. But just based on, I guess, my experience having run, I think that one of the most important parts of, running for state office or, getting selected as state officer is really caring about DECA. I think that the interview, when you're campaigning or when you're having an interview or when you're assembling your portfolio, if you really have that feeling for DECA, if you have that passion for DECA, it really becomes clear during your presentation or during your interview or during your portfolio. It becomes clear that you have that. And I think that's the number one factor that really influences the result. If you care so deeply about DECA, it's clear that as a state officer, you're going to make some important and impressive changes to California DECA and improve the experience for all the other members and be an excellent leader. So I think that expressing how much all of you care about DECA and how you're taking this step forward because DECA means so much to you and you want to give back to an organization that's given so much to you, I think that's one of the most important things.
So I was wondering, as a state officer, how much time have you guys had to maybe stay active in your specific current DECA chapters? Stay active.
So to answer this question is Lenexa. She's been working really hard to manage the two things. So I'm going to let her give this question a shot.
Okay, so it really, as a state officer, you really do have a chance to stay active within your chapter. So my chapter had a little bit of trouble this year. We couldn't find an advisor to begin with, and we got 2 new advisors this year. So they're learning the ropes, and I think I've played a big part in making sure my chapter is getting registered on time, making sure that we're registered for NorCal. All our membership dues are put in things. So you do, but I also get a chance to attend every single chapter event that we have. I get to go to all the meetings, all the practices. I'm still getting to do that. So just because you're a state officer doesn't mean that you lose any time that you're going to spend with your chapter.
Okay, so besides the events that are listed on the document, how many times in the year do you meet without just an estimate?
So I'm gonna go ahead and let Joel answer this question.
So we meet a lot of the times. The way we communicate with each other are typically through video calls. However, we often will go to conferences for planning reasons, or that they're DECA sponsored conferences. The times that we all get together, there are only around 6 or 7 times a year that we actually do that. There are other conferences that are district specific. And so, if, for example, if you're from NorCal, you would not be attending a Southern California conference. So together as a whole, you probably are going to be attending around 9 or 10 events throughout the year, along with some smaller events, for example, chapter visits. But for the entire state officer team, it'll only be around 6 or 7.
And in terms of video calls, we have bi-weekly team meetings where we'll do a video call to see how we're doing on our plans and update ourselves with what's going on. And then, yeah, as Joe mentioned, usually 6 to 7 times. Usually you'll meet the officers in your own district a little bit more than you'll meet officers in other districts. But usually you get to spend, 6 or 7, good solid weekends together.
All right, thank you. And one more question. So I live in Southern California, and let's say there's an event in Northern California that I have to go to and things like that. How do I get there? Do I have to do I have to provide my own transportation, or do you guys pay for like planes and stuff like that, or?
So that's a great question. In the occasion that situation arises, it will be very clearly mentioned in the candidate packet if that's an upcoming event that you'll be having to go to. But in the situation that event arises, California DECA, as long as the California DECA event that they've specifically asked you to attend on the behalf of California DECA, California DECA will provide transportation for you.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
I have a question about the $250 campaign spending limit. Could you just elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. So the $250 campaign spending limit is just a limit. So when you're setting up, your campaign booth, you want to have promotional materials. Again, there's some rules into, what type of promotional materials you can have in the candidate packet. But there's just a limit. So the total amount of money you spend on your entire campaign should be limited to within $250. So I think it can get a little bit confusing, but I think like most important things, like for example, if you have a set of markers at home, I wouldn't necessarily include that in my campaign thing. But if you're getting some specialized, high tech, like $50 markers just to make your, poster, shine and like go on, like light on fire in the middle and then, come back or something awesome, like something included. But if it's something common, anyone can expect to have at home, that's fine. Like for example, with printer paper, if you're just printing out a few pages, that's fine. But if you're printing out a lot of pages in color, that's something that will go in your budget.
When would you say that, like, as a team, you guys are the most active during the year?
That's a great question. I think that we haven't hit. So there's actually two stretches I'd say when we're most active. The first stretch is right when we're elected. The next few months, we have a meeting where we plan for ICDC. We're together at ICDC, and then right after that, we're together in May. We go to Sacramento and meet with some of the legislators. And then the other spurt, I guess, of when we meet each other a lot are during conferences. So in January, we're really active. We're going to be going to our respective district conferences. And then we're also going to be meeting one weekend in January to plan for the state conference. So I think it's, right when we're getting into our terms and right when we're closing out our terms, those are very hectic times. Okay, any more questions?
Yeah, I was wondering, so if you're running for a district position and you get elected, what do you do in like the 2 months that you aren't officially installed?
So that's a great question. And actually what you're going to be doing is you're going to be called, first of all, the district VP elect. And what you'll be doing is you'll be actually preparing for the, state conference, because there you're still going to be participating in campaign and election activities. So at the election session at state conference, you're still going to be there. You're still going to be, appearing on stage and, introducing yourself to members and things like that. So like a lot of your work won't start that time. So you won't start, working on plans for California DECA in that, 1 or 2 month gap in between, but you'll definitely be, you'll be preparing an informational booth for the state conference. So now that you've been elected, it's time, for your plans, your agenda, your vision for California DECA. It's time to start, selling that, getting to do that at the state conference. So you want to prepare for that. And that'll be your main focus. And then as soon as, the new team is installed and ready to go at the end of the state conference, then, you can really start working on some of your ideas and projects. Any more questions? All right. Well, before we kind of wrap this up, I wanted to mention that for all of us, we have our contact information available on the California DECA website. So if you ever have any questions, feel free to email us and we'll get back to you really quickly. I know that when I was running, I had so many questions. I'm pretty sure all of the state officers knew me by name as the guy who just kept asking questions. And I don't think asking questions is a bad thing at all. So I encourage asking as many questions as possible, because the more clear you are on this process, the more confident you're going to be going into it. And I think that's something that's really important. So feel free to fire away with questions right now, later via email, whatever works for you guys, and we'll be happy to help you in any way we can. All right. So if nobody has any more questions, well, I'd like to thank you guys so much for coming out to this session. I look forward to hearing about how all of you do, and we'll be seeing you at conferences, and look forward to seeing your campaign booths and seeing how you guys do. Thank you so much.
Mark, your book is pretty good, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.